Welcome back, everyone, to My Fantasy Podcast from your guys at myfantasysportstalk.com. I am one of your writers and editors for the site and co-host and host of the My Fantasy Podcast. I don't even know what I am or what I do anymore. It's been so long since we've been on the air with you guys, and I did a podcast. I'm sorry, but I am Brandon Reed. I'm quite certain of that. The editor-in-chief president and my co-host of the My Fantasy Podcast is Dan Shaw. Dan, it's been a while since we did this. You can tell I'm rusty, trying to shake this rust off, but just a lot of stuff going on, man. You had a baby. Little Charlie's now 7 weeks old. I've been going through a pretty busy summer. And I had a lightning strike, which pretty much took down the base operation of My Fantasy Podcast for a little while. So I kind of feel naked and displaced without my main computer. And therefore, anyway, long story short, we've been away for a while and looking to get back into it. Right in time, though, for fantasy football time.
Yeah, I mean, My Fantasy Sports Talk, that's kind of what we do here. Fantasy football is our busy time, the NFL season. It's kind of what we strive for, and that's when we see the boost in popularity for the site. So I'm excited to be back. As you mentioned, I have a 7-week-old now, Charlie Shulk. She loves her Dallas Cowboys. She loves her sports. We watch baseball all the time together. So I love it. It's a little tiring. I'm a little sleep deprived, but I'm glad to be here with you, Brandon. My days just aren't the same when I don't get to see your face weekly.
I know. I was just thinking back. We used to do this 2 hours a week, every single week, and we grew such a great base from My Fantasy Podcast, and I appreciate all you guys and hope you guys stay with us. We're just kind of pulling back the reins a little bit and hope to check in with you guys, though, but we want to bring you just kind of updates every so often through My Fantasy Podcast of what's going on myfantasysportstalk.com, and like you said, this is about to be the busiest time of the year, so we'll have fantasy rankings out by the time this podcast is released. You will have had your quarterback rankings and your running back rankings out. So 2 huge ones there. And we're just going to keep rolling from there.
Yeah. And even better is we have Des the Kitty joining us today. So she's here. She's ready to impact the show as usual. So for those who are longtime listeners and watchers, she always sneaks her head in. Now she's going to sneak in a little bit more. So I'm looking forward to it. Top 75 running back rankings just dropped. Top 30 quarterbacks dropped last week, and we got so much feedback from those top 30 quarterbacks. That's kind of why we were like, okay, let's get our butts together and let's do a little show to answer your questions because we got some nice feedback.
And a personal question real quick, though. How is Des the Kitty and Romo the dog accepting and adopting the newest member of the Shulk household, little Charlie Shulk?
Yeah, Mama Shulk was worried about that. Me, not so much because, Des and Romo, they love Daddy. So, but they love Charlie. Mom was a little worried, but they're like their protectors. Romo's a little crazy at times, Romo the dog, but he just comes up, puts her head right on her, and they get along great. He'll lick her toes every once in a while, and she'll giggle. But yeah, it's been a smooth transition. Des the Kitty watches over her at night, so it's been great. It's been a very loving time in the Shulk household, and I couldn't be happier with it.
Well, that's great. I knew everything would come together, and you got quite a big family there to take care of now, Dan Shulk. So, but I appreciate your time and checking in with us, and we'll still be able to get to do the podcast from time to time. And we'll check in with our other guys, from time to time. Ryan Thomas, DDT, Dylan Davis-Trotto, Orlando Torres. Everybody's busy, not to mention this is the summertime. So, but everyone's going to have to kind of clamp down here soon and get back with it all because of, football season and fantasy football. And to tell you the truth, Dan, I can't wait. I really can't wait. I don't want to wish away summer, but I honestly cannot wait for this NFL season. Number one is because I am so tired of this back and forth and this trash talk. Why do I do it to myself? For these Tennessee Titans fans, why do I do it to myself? I don't know, but I know you follow it as well, but I can't wait for football. And I root for the Tennessee Titans, but I'm also a realistic fan. I can tell you the range of how many games they're going to win. They're going to win between 7 and at the most 10 games. They're not Super Bowl contenders, man. But if you follow Tennessee or just NFL storylines in general, this is it for Marcus Mariota. He has not lived up to a number 2 overall pick. I don't care what you say. The numbers in the eye test tell you he has not lived up to number 2 pick, but people defend him to the death. So I just can't wait to get into football. And not even really just to say I told you so, but to put this chapter to bed. And I know you can understand what I'm saying.
Definitely, I am part of those Titans groups that you get mercilessly beaten down, and but you hang tough. You hang in there like Marcus Mariota in the pocket. Maybe you don't break a knee or a shoulder like he does, but yeah, it's a make it or break it year for Mariota, for a lot of the Titans players. I would say they did put some weapons around him, and I think that's the biggest thing that I see is his defenders, the Mariota defenders. Oh, we got all these weapons now. Now this is his chance to show you just how great he is. But for me, for a quarterback that has gone down during his career, he peaked 2 to 3 years ago, and it's been a steady decline, whether it's throwing more interceptions than touchdowns, or what did he throw last year? 12 touchdowns total.
11 and 8.
That's not in today's NFL. That's not good enough. So I was a believer in Mariota back in 2016. But now I think he's a backup, and I think we're going to see Ryan Tannehill play the same amount, if not more, games than Mariota for the Titans in 2019.
And so I wanted to get, because I just feel like I'm bombarded with local fans and fans that are just like rah, support your team, support the guys, that wearing the uniform. And I understand that. And of course I do, but I've seen this chapter play out before. I mean, how many years are we going to go through this? I played out what they're talking about this year, last year. Last year was a contract year for him because he was playing for a new big contract. He was lucky to get that 5th year term on his rookie contract. So last year was a contract year, in my opinion. It was. In actuality, it was. And he put up I don't care about the excuses. The offensive line, Delaney Walker went down, our one tight end. Oh, no wonder he only had 11 TDs. BS, man. He was a number 2 overall pick. Look what Baker Mayfield did. Baker Mayfield came in, didn't really care who the OC was, didn't care who the coach was, didn't care who he was throwing to. The kid had juice. He came in throwing the ball. He's a stud. He's a quarterback. But anyway, I threw this out on Facebook today just to get some feedback. And I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but it's really kind of what I've been following over the summer storylines. I threw this out to a national sports talk group on Facebook. Is Marcus Mariota franchise QB? What do you think of him? Will Ryan Tannehill eventually start games for the Titans this year? I didn't have a whole lot of feedback, but just a few of the responses that I got were kind of on both ends of the spectrum as far as Marcus Mariota goes. Michael Spurlock says he needs to take a few more steps to be a franchise QB. I don't think Ryan Tannehill will start over him at all, though, however, this year. Jesse Pacheco, he's on the bubble. It's a make or break year for him. He's very talented, no doubt, but let's see how it plays out. I'm pulling for the youngster. Vince Stevenson says they are both good backups. Neither should be a starter, let alone a franchise QB. And then Blaine Garcia says he's on the cusp. It seems like he gets banged up a lot and can't remain consistent. Only way Tannehill sees the field is because of injury. Mariota is better. So, favorable opinions for Mariota. I tend to agree with Vince Stevenson a little bit more, and I believe you do too, Dan, as they're both pretty good. They'll be pretty good backups in the NFL, but I think their days as starters are numbered. But so anyway, that's kind of my Titans check in for you guys. What's the Dallas Cowboys looking like for this year? What's the major storylines coming out of Dallas for you this year, Dan?
Yeah, surprisingly, the Cowboys are being ranked as one of the most talented teams in the NFL, and that's somewhat of a surprise to me. Those who have followed the site know that I'm not a real believer yet in Dak. I don't think he is a franchise guy, at least a franchise guy that should be paid more than $30 million a year. To me, that's crazy.
This is not unique to Tennessee. This is the point I wanted to, is Dak and Mariota not kind of close to the same situation? You have a lot of people within the fan base that could go either way. Like, look what he's done. He's won a playoff game. We, made the playoffs. But is he really that guy?
Yeah, I mean, I think you take away Ezekiel Elliott out of the equation in Dallas, and Dak he's not going to carry you to anything special. So the Cowboys' questions are: you have to pay Dak, you have to pay Zeke, you have to pay Amari Cooper, and then you have the defenders that you have to pay: Jalen Smith, Leighton Vander Esch in a few more years, DeMarcus Lawrence. You have all of these needs, these guys that are running out of time with their contracts. So you got to pick and choose who you're going to pay. And I sadly believe that Dak is at the top of that list, and I think he should be at the very bottom. But nonetheless, a lot of people are predicting good things out of the Cowboys. I'm not too sure. I'm not sold on it. I think 9-7 is probable. Are they going to go to the Super Bowl? Like I'm seeing a lot of people predict. No, I don't think so. I have no reason to believe that, especially if Ezekiel Elliott holds out in camp and if he misses any games, who knows? But I'm kind of with you. I don't think I think they're better than the Titans, than your Titans, but I don't think they're going to be Super Bowl contenders. I think they're a playoff team. Are they anything more than that? Probably not.
Well, see, here's the thing, Dan. You're a realistic fan. There's quite a hard divide between realistic fans and rah-rah cheerleading fans. You wouldn't believe what you would believe because you see it on the Titans message boards. How many people think Marcus is going to be a Pro Bowler this year? The Titans are going to the Super Bowl. I don't know if it's just talk, but some of these people really believe that. I'm like, I can look at this roster right now and tell you they're not going very far if they do make the playoffs. I mean, it ain't that hard. Vegas has them as the third worst odds to win the Super Bowl. They have the worst odds of even winning the division. Look, on paper, this team is better, but their offense is still not good at all. There's not much talent on that offense, including the quarterback, Marcus Mariota. I got in trouble last podcast or just people just commenting like you ain't even say his name right. I don't. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what his name is. He'll be on ESPN like Mark Sanchez in 4 years, folks. Okay, but you're a realistic fan, Dan. You can analyze the team, analyze the rest of the NFL, who got better too, and you can tell where your team falls in line.
Yeah, and I think that's a rarity. I mean, I'm sure all fan bases kind of have those homers that are sold. I mean, living in Buffalo, I'm hearing nonstop the Bills are more than a playoff team talk. They're going to take the Patriots down this year and win the AFC East. I have them as the third best team in the AFC East, behind the Patriots and Jets, who got substantially better as well. But yeah, I think every fan base has it, and not only that, but to add to your Titans. Drama, I guess you would say, is Taylor Lewan is suspended 4 games for some type of drug use, and that is going to be even more crushing to Mariota, because if they can't keep him upright without arguably their best offensive lineman, that's hurting. That's hurting.
And to me, it's just another built-in excuse. You've seen it, Dan. How many excuses does this guy have after 4 years? How many excuses does he have? And this is just going to be another one. But to me, I'm kind of brushing this off. This has been the big news today, but I'm brushing it off because if you looked at their schedule, Dan, I only had them winning maybe going 1-3, possibly 0-4 to start the season anyway. They start out with the Browns. They have a game against the Colts, the Jags, and I can't place the other team right now in the first 4, but anyway, it's a tough schedule to start the first 4 anyway. Yeah, so yeah, I don't know what you expect, but they were going to go in, and that's going to feed into this. Watch during training camp. Watch during the preseason, because I truly believe that Tannehill is going to look as sharp as Mariota in the preseason games. And I think the record is going to dictate some change by game 5 or 6, because the record is not going to be good. I can almost promise you that. But anyway, it's almost football time, and I can't wait because these things will get played out on the field, and the talk will continue, of course. So, but we actually have some questions that you guys proposed to us. So let's get into that. Some of our fantasy mailbag questions. We're going to start out today talking about the Chiefs. First one comes from Josh Grogan. What is your thought on Damian Williams this season? Is he a must-own definite RB2 in that Chiefs offense, Dan?
This has been a hot topic. This was not the only Damian Williams question submitted this week. A lot of people are just buying in to the Damian Williams hype because he is first on the depth chart in a dangerous Chiefs offense. I personally am not buying into it yet. And the reason for that is we just don't know. As you know, we just don't know what kind of running back he is when given the load of a starter. And he's never had more than 13 carries in a single game in his entire career. Not even NFL, but you go back to college, he wasn't even the starter in college. So he's just never been that workhorse guy. So to think that he's all of a sudden going to be this year, I'm not buying it. The Chiefs signed Carlos Hyde in the offseason, who can come in and steal those carries away. Andy Reid is always good and always has valuable fantasy running backs, but Damian Williams is not Kareem Hunt of last year. He's just not. So I'm a wait and see. He might be a low end running back too, but for where he's being drafted in the third round of most drafts. That's a little bit too soon for me. I've even seen him gone in the second round, which makes him basically an RB1 in a lot of leagues. And I wouldn't put that much stock in Damian Williams as the guy that you're going to want to rely on your fantasy team. So if I can get him a little bit later, maybe around 6, which probably won't happen, sure, I'll bite. But I'm not sold that he's going to be the main player in Kansas City for the entire season. My running back rankings, which are about to be released, have him right now, and it's still a little fluid, could change up and down a couple spots, but he's my 18th ranked running back. So 18th ranked, you're not drafting him in the first 3 rounds.
Yeah, you pretty much said everything I was going to say. I do think that Casey has something going on with those plug-and-play running backs. Some have more degree of success than others, but they always seem to have that guy. And I don't think that's going to change just because I think it's the system. It's plug-and-play as far as your running backs go. They're going to have success. And now, particularly because the offense is so dangerous with your quarterback and receiving core with Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. So I think the running back there is going to have success. I just don't know which way to lean yet because, like you said, it's unproven as far as Damian Williams. And I'll tell you what, Carlos Hyde was having a pretty good year on this guy's fantasy team last year before he got traded and just benched outright. So, I mean, he was the guy. Nick Chubb came in and looked great for the Browns last year, but Carlos Hyde was carrying the load for the first, 4 or 5 weeks, good month or so of the season and looking pretty good. So, will they fall back on, the veteran Carlos Hyde? Will he eventually take the number 1 spot? I just don't know. I think whoever does end up with the number 1 slot there in the running back depth chart for Kansas City, as long as they stay healthy, they're probably going to have success. But as of now, I would consider them mid-tier as far as team, as far as drafting a running back. But what I was going to say to John is it's going to depend on where you fall in your draft, man, and who's left and, where you want to slot your pick. So but he did say must own definite running back 2. So if you're looking for that second running back on your team, like I said, it just depends on who's left and where you fall inside the draft. So we'll see. But I can't tell you that eventually we're going to look up, in November and Damian Williams has had a better season than Carlos Hyde. It could be completely the opposite. I just don't know. But I think the running game will have some success there in Kansas City. I think it's a little bit too early to just solidify Damian Williams as the complete number 1 back there in Kansas City. So we'll see. I'm not sure if that helps you, John, but again, it just depends on where you draft. And I'm glad you've already been through some mocks and some already doing some drafting, Dan, so you kind of know what the average draft position is for some of these guys.
Yeah, I've definitely done some mock drafts, and we didn't mention in the start, but with my running back rankings, I am part of the Fantasy Pros expert platform. Again, this year, this is my second year in it, where basically my rankings go up against all of the experts that Fantasy Pros accumulates from and brings out their consensus rankings. And with that, we've gotten ADP information, average draft position of where players are going, and we've gotten some insights to those type of things like pro leagues on Yahoo, ESPN, and NFL.com. And so they've already actually had drafts, a lot of the so-called experts. And so we see where players are already being drafted. And Damian Williams is shooting up ADP-wise for whatever reason. I think, the Chiefs offense as a whole, you're going to see players drafted higher than where they necessarily should. No doubt the Chiefs offense is talented, but are they going to be able to put up and replicate the exact same type of season that they had last year? I'm not so sure.
Yep, agree. I don't think they have quite that Kareem Hunt talent or other talent that we've seen in the past. But we'll see. There's someone's going to have to run the ball, and I think they'll be able to do so effectively there in Kansas City. Next question comes from Julian O'Day. Dan, why do you love famous Jameis this year? He's inside your top 10? What? And before I kick it over to you for explanation, Dan, is I gotta kind of say I kind of agree with you, Dan, because they got weapons with Mike Evans and OJ Howard, Cameron Brate. They are gonna have some weapons, and they always throw the ball. I mean, their defense isn't very good, or traditionally hasn't been very good. So they're in shootouts. And did you realize, Dan, that both Ryan Fitzpatrick and Jameis Winston both finished with much better production numbers last year than one Marcus Mariota? Two quarterbacks on one team had much better production than the starter in Tennessee.
Yeah, I mean, I did know that. That wasn't hard. I mean, I think me and you could have gone out there for a couple games and put up better numbers than Mariota. But yeah, I like famous Jameis Winston this year. Listen, I got burned by him a couple years ago when I put him all the way up as my number one guy. It was kind of a crapshoot, and it came back to bite me a little bit. But this year, I'm a believer, and it's for a lot of what you said. There's weapons around him: Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, OJ Howard. I think Ronald Jones is going to bounce back from a disastrous rookie season where he barely saw the field. But there's a couple other reasons. Bruce Arians, he's kind of a quarterback whisperer. Wherever he goes, you see the quarterbacks kind of have success. And not many people know this, but I mean, you mentioned Fitz and Winston put up better numbers than Mariota last year. If you combine their season from 2018, they were the second best quarterback in all of fantasy football last year. So, I mean, none of them started the full 16 games, but Fitz isn't there this year. This is Winston's job. He's not going to lose it. So he was the quarterback too, if you combine Fitz's numbers with his. So I'm a believer, and I have him ranked 8th, and I have him as a sleeper. So, you know, you can take him. He's not going to be drafted as the 8th best quarterback, so you can get him even later. So there's even more value around his name. And I think he's going to definitely perform within the top 10 of all fantasy quarterbacks this year. And that is almost certain in my mind.
Well, he has a bad reputation. And you also have to separate fantasy from real life and real team. The team is not going to have much success this year, in my opinion, anyway. I don't foresee that anyway. So I think there's going to be a lot of passing opportunity. And he's one of those guys that collects gaudy numbers. The team may not collect the win in the end, but Jameis is going to collect gaudy numbers. So if you're talking about fantasy, I have to agree with you. I think this could be a big year, and still got weapons. You know, still got Mike Evans. I love that tight end duo of OJ Howard and Cameron Brate. See, that's why I was trying to convince these Titans fans, and I was wishing that J-Rob in the offseason would sign another big pass-catching tight end, because there's nothing wrong with that. People act like you got Delaney Walker or one good tight end, and you're good. That's good. No, we got one. No, having two good pass-catching tight ends is a really good thing in today's NFL, if you got the quarterback. So I really like that. Like I said, I don't really see many wins for Tampa Bay this year, but when all said and done, Jameis will collect some gaudy numbers. So I'm not is quite sold on number 8. You have him really high, Dan, but I could easily see top 12 for Jameis Winston when all said and done. So let's move on. Next question comes from Dave King. As a Melvin Gordon owner in a dynasty league, should I be worried about him and his holdout this season? Dan, I know you're a guy who likes Melvin Gordon. It seems like you end up with Melvin Gordon on your team. Maybe I'm making this up, but it seems like you're a pretty big fan of Melvin Gordon, and you've had him at least a couple times in the last several years.
Yeah. I mean, he performs well. He's a solid RB1. You know what you're getting with him. And that Chargers offense is, to me, it's like the Chiefs. You know they're going to score points. They're going to run the football. Gordon's going to be a factor in the passing game. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of Melvin Gordon, and I am very worried about this holdout. It seems like, and obviously I don't have insider information into the Chargers locker room or front office, but it seems like both parties are at a standstill. Gordon saying he's not going to play without a contract, and the Chargers came out this week and said he is not going to get a new contract when we expect him to play it out. So what's going to give? Who's going to give? And I can almost be certain that Gordon is not going to show up for the bulk of training camp, which then obviously hurts his potential production into the season. I mean, I don't expect a Le'Veon Bell situation where, Gordon's going to miss the entire season, but missing some games is definitely possible. or if not, rust is definitely possible. So in a dynasty format, I mean, maybe you can sell him, and depending on what you can get, but I think it's going to hurt his value even more in redraft leagues, which might be good. Maybe you can get him a little bit later, but if you do draft him in the first round or in the second round, and he misses, the week 1 or 2, that automatically kind of stabs you a little bit. So I would be concerned. It's definitely something to monitor. Obviously, we're still new into this whole off season. Like training camp is still a couple weeks away or a week away. So there's still time, but it's definitely a concerning situation.
Well, for me, no, I'm not concerned at all because I think a lot of players probably learned from Le'Veon Bell last year. Number one, it depends on mindset and personality too, but I don't think any of these players, I think these players enjoy playing, well, they have to enjoy playing football, but they love the fantasy aspect of it too. And the bottom line is you have to be on the field to make money. I think Le'Veon Bell looked like a fool last year, and a lot of players are going to learn from that. This is bad, worst case scenario. This is what could happen because Le'Veon Bell missed out on about $20 million over a 2-year period, and guess what? Now he plays for the Jets instead of the Steelers. So he didn't look good. He didn't look good. It doesn't smell good coming out of Le'Veon Bell. Maybe he can turn it around, but I think he looked a little foolish in the scenario, and players are going to learn from that. It is still very early in the summer. I expect Melvin Gordon to be on the field at least by week 3. I don't see this dragging it because once the guys start suiting up and playing real games, the other guys that are outside of that miss that, and they want to be there. And it kills them to not be on the field. I don't know how Le'Veon Bell did it all year. And then to end up kind of on the bad end of the deal, it really made him look foolish. And another thing, as far as fantasy goes, you can always trade Melvin Gordon. He's going to be an asset. You just have to know when to do it. You're going to have to play the situation out because I don't think any of us saw a complete entire year holdout from Le'Veon Bell last year. He was still drafted fairly high in our league, and I'm quite certain, Dan, that he was even traded in our league at least once. Am I mistaken on that?
He may very well could have been. I'm pretty sure Richard Lunt, one of our writers who actually hails from Great Britain, he drafted him early. But yeah, I think he may have dealt him late to try and recoup and make the playoffs, and I don't think it worked. I think he waited too long and held on to him for too long. But yeah, I think he was dealt.
But it's always an option. And there's always players like a Casey Birch out there who are throwing and wheeling and dealing some trade offers out there. You're going to find that guy who can take them off your hands. If you really get concerned going into week 3 or 4 and he still ain't on the field, I think you'll be okay there because there's going to be someone that didn't start out their season too well that you can deal them to and probably get a couple of good assets back for that may help you in the long run. So, no, I'm not really worried about it at all, especially if you're talking about in a dynasty situation. I'm not really concerned about this at all as far as that goes. And we've seen this before. This is nothing new. This has been going on for a couple of decades. It never reached the level that it did last year with Le'Veon Bell. And like I said, I think players have learned from that that's kind of worst case scenario. That didn't really work out too good for you. You lost money and now you got to play for the Jets. That ain't good. That's lose, friend. All right. So let's move on. Guess what, Dan? It's time to talk Tennessee Titans. It's been a while since we have done that. Next question comes from Isaac Erber. Will Derrick Henry finally be the workhorse we all know he should be? So I'll just kind of start out here. I don't foresee it, Dan, because number one, you got a new OC, and he's a former tight ends coach. So I think he's going to be looking to work. I think his specialty, or at least comfort zone, is going to be working underneath to the tight ends. That's one thing. Number two is that Marcus Mariota is in a contract year, make or break year. Everyone knows that. You got to do something with this guy. You have to show that you can throw more than 13 times a game and get more than 130 yards a game. You're going to have to open it up, or you probably ain't going to be the OC for very long. So that's number two. Number three, Corey Davis is in a make or break year, or put up or shut up type situation. Okay. Number four, you got Adam Humphries and AJ Brown. Now you added two great offensive passing weapons that you're going to have to utilize, or what's the point? So I expect to see a little bit more passing out of the Titans this year. That's what I hope to see. You can't be so one-dimensional with the Titans. That's part of their problem. Their offense is so boring, predictable, and just flat out bad that you got to get better with that. So The problem with Derrick Henry, I'm surprised he finished where he did last year. He actually ended up, I think, 13th in overall fantasy production. I was kind of taken back by that because he always kind of starts out slow and then picks it up in the end. Whether that's play calling or his comfort zone, I don't know. But I don't look for much of an uptick. He averaged about 14 carries a game last season. I can't see that exceeding more than 16 or 17 carries this year. So add up the yardage. I don't know what you're looking for exactly there, but workhorse to me, when I think of workhorse, I think of Zeke Elliott, Todd Gurley, David Johnson, those type of guys, and I don't see that type of a workhorse type production from Derrick Henry. But it's just too much unknown. You got a brand new play caller. He's a tight ends coach. So it's too much unknown, but I just don't see it. I don't see a huge jump anyway. So I wouldn't necessarily call him workhorse. And you still got a very talented guy who plays a little bit different role in Dion Lewis. So don't forget about him. So I just don't think it's going to fit into the scheme to just pound it like a Zeke or a David Johnson with Derrick Henry and the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, I agree with basically everything you said. I don't see the Titans. I was surprised looking at Derrick Henry's numbers from last year that he even eclipsed 1,000 yards. He did so just barely, but he scored 12 touchdowns. That was surprising. Now, breaking down his game log, most of that came in the last 5 weeks of the season. So he was a very slow starter. A lot of people dropped or even traded him from some of the research that I had done. So I don't expect workhorse type numbers for all the reasons you said, and then at the end you touched on it as Dion Lewis. He's too versatile. Not only can you hand the ball off, but he's going to be playing basically every third down or every second and long. So if Mariota is taking sacks, getting sacked 11 times in a game, they're going to be playing behind the sticks. Causing Dion Lewis to just be out there more than Derrick Henry. I mean, they take him off the field for most receiving or passing situations. So that automatically kind of digs into that workhorse type back. The guys you mentioned, Zeke, David Johnson, even like a Melvin Gordon, typically they're on the field third downs. They can catch the ball. They can make an impact in multiple phases. Henry is a north-south runner. You're going to hand it to him in between the tackles, and he's going to work that way. So, on your Titans page today, I don't know if you saw it, somebody was outraged that he was not within the top 12 of fantasy running backs in PPR leagues. Which is
why should he?
What? Where did this come from? But yeah, I don't have him. I don't have him ranked in the top 12 in PPR formats or top 15. I don't even know if he would probably be a fringe top 20 guy. I think if you check my rankings, I think he is 20th in standard formats. So, that's where I would take him. He's a low end RB2 in my mind this year in fantasy football.
I would have to agree just because of the unknown, man. It's just so much unknown with the Tennessee Titans offense this year. Like I said, with the new signal caller, the play caller in Arthur Smith, you got two new guys that you're trying to implement and need to implement immediately in the passing game with Adam Humphries and A.J. Brown. You have Corey Davis, who needs to live up to his first round billing. But on the other hand, is Marcus Mariota even the quarterback to even do that? I mean, I just don't see him as an open up quarterback. I think there's a reason that 4 different OCs have decided we can't let this guy loose and open it up and let him go and let it fly. There's a reason that they haven't done that. It's not just a 30-year franchise history of pounding, ground and pound and 3 yards in a cloud of dust. That's ridiculous. You play to the talent that you have, and I don't know. There's just so much unknown with the Tennessee Titans this year that is going to be very interesting to watch. I think Derrick Henry will be fun. I like the duo of Derrick Henry and Dion Lewis playing together, but you got to have a passing attack to benefit both of those. And we just don't. We don't pass it. We don't pass it at all. We're like dead last in the league the last several years. We have been almost dead last in passing, around 28, 29, 30 in passing attempts in Marcus Mariota's career. Is that coincidence or not? When 4 different OCs have just refused to pass the ball with this guy, that tells me something. So, but we'll see. That workhorse, I can't see that. I can't see that, Isaac, from Derrick Henry this year. Let's move on. Next question comes from Steve Tran. Would it be successful to draft Kelsey in the first, Hill in the second, and Mahomes in the third? I'm not a Chiefs fan, but I'm a fan of those three players' talent. What do you say, Dan? I mean, first of all, you got kind of two parts to this question to me, the way I see it. Number one, you're going Chiefs heavy, which I don't disagree with. I like all three of those players, but how about that draft order he put them in? Is that going to work out for you?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm going to stack on one team, I'll stack the Chiefs offense, and those are the three players that I would want the most on all of them. Looking at the order, I mean, Kelsey, you're getting the number one tight end. I think that's fairly consensus out of all of the so-called experts that put it out there. He is the number one tight end in a great passing attack. Tyreek Hill, now that you know he's supposedly not getting suspended, yeah, I mean, I guess that's a wide receiver one that you would want based on the numbers that he put up last year. The one that I don't agree with is Mahomes. Despite he's my number one ranked quarterback, but in my rankings, I even put you don't want to take a quarterback early in this type of draft. This is one of the deepest quarterback drafts in all of fantasy football in my recent memory. And third round, to me, I wouldn't take a quarterback. You can, we're going to answer a sleeper quarterback question next. That I think is going to show you where the value is later in the round. So I personally would not do this stacking. If I am going to stack on any team, I probably would stack the Chiefs. And I'm glad Damian Williams isn't in this list, like we had talked about earlier. So, Steve, I wouldn't stack it like that. But if you want to go Kelsey Hill, I'm okay with it. But it's a little concerning because if there is a defense that the Chiefs play that does manage to game plan against them and shut them down, then I mean you're cooked for the week if you have all three of those players. It didn't happen a whole lot last year, so you have history, I guess, on your side. But I don't expect the Chiefs and Mahomes specifically to put up the type of numbers that he had last year. Still my number one ranked quarterback, but is he going to have 50 touchdowns? I don't know. I don't think so. So I personally wouldn't stack it like that. But if you want to grab a couple Chiefs guys on offense, Kelsey, Hill, yeah, that's nice. But it limits your capabilities or flexibility with your roster.
Well, and I like what he's trying to do, but I'm not taking a tight end in the first round. I don't know. This is what I'm talking about, the order. You may have to take Hill in the first round, which is a guy I had last year, which really helped carry my team last year. But I'm not taking a tight end. To me, tight end, that's at least like the third most irrelevant position. I never care about the tight end. I do pretty well. Maybe a good tight end would put me over the hump, but I just never see teams winning championships that are so dependent upon their tight end. I just don't care. There's always usually only those three guys or so that make an impact anyway. If you don't get those top three guys, which you're going to reach for probably in the top 4 or 5 rounds, if you don't get those top 3 or 4 tight ends, then it doesn't really matter who your tight end is. They're going to get what they're going to get. They're going to get 4 to 7 points a week, maybe, if you're lucky. And it just doesn't matter. No Rob Gronkowski this year even adds to that even further. Kelsey has to be the number one tight end, but no way in hell do I ever reach for a tight end in the first round. You may have to take Hill in the first round, but I'm going just the opposite, Dan. If you want Patrick Mahomes, after what he did last year, some guys are going to reach in the first couple of rounds for Mahomes because he puts up the points. He's going to put up points. If you want to start there and build your team, and you have an idea of how to build that team around that main quarterback, then I say more power to you. I don't think Mahomes is going to last to the 5th round in most leagues. I don't see that happening. I think that people are going to reach, and I may be one of those guys that reaches for him because he puts up the points. Big fan of Mahomes, and I think he will come close to duplicating his production from this past year because I think he's the real deal. He does things with the ball and makes throws that guys can't do. He's like Nolan Ryan out there on the football field. He does things that most guys can't do. So, but I like Kelsey. If you had to stack, last year I was just kicking myself all year long that I went with Deshaun Watson and reached for Deshaun Watson over Patrick Mahomes. If I would have had Patrick Mahomes along with that duo of Tyreek Hill last year, I would have won the championship pretty much guaranteed. So I'm a fan of your strategy, Steve. I really am. just be careful about that tight end. That just scares me. Don't go for the tight end first. Start with Hill, maybe work your way down. But then again, it depends on the size of your league and where you're drafting and all that. So, but I do like the strategy. If you manage to get all three of those guys and they stay healthy, I can pretty much guarantee you a playoff spot for sure, no question. So, good luck to you, Steve. Last question. We're going to talk sleeper quarterbacks, as Dan mentioned before. Last question is from Zach Harris. Sleeper quarterback to draft very late. And before I give mine, because you're going to get a chuckle out of it, Dan, you're going to love it. You're just going to love it. So let's hear from you first, Dan. Sleeper quarterback very late.
Yeah, I'm one guy that I'm going to have my eye on. You should probably plug your ears, Brandon, because I don't want you stealing them from me in our draft. But that's the man, Jimmy Garoppolo. Last year, he was drafted, obviously, before his injury, as around quarterback 10. This year in drafts so far, he's going in the 20s, which is very late. That's towards the end of most drafts. And I think he has the talent. I like the offense, some of the weapons that they have around him
You saw
to
what
do
Nick
well.
Mullins did last year. I mean, if Nick Mullins can come in and do what he did.
Yeah, and Kyle Shanahan is kind of that quarterback whisperer that his father Mike was to running backs when he was with the Broncos. So I like Jimmy G as kind of a sleeper quarterback. A couple names just based on ADP who actually have gone lower than Jimmy G in some drafts. Mitch Trubisky, who he had a 4-week stretch where he was last year during this 4-week stretch. He was the best fantasy quarterback ever in the history of fantasy football. He put up more points during that 4-week stretch than any quarterback previously in those 4 weeks, which was shocking when I read that stat. And he's being drafted in the late teens, early 20s. Another guy, Matthew Stafford, he was a perennial top 10 quarterback, but he's kind of fallen off. His weapons have kind of taken a hit. He doesn't have that much of a running game, although I do like Kerryon Johnson. But he's a guy also going in the 20s. That was shocking. I think I know who you're going to say, so I'm gonna save it. I think I know. But I have two names down here. We'll circle back to them after you give me yours. But I have two other names on this list that I think you might be mentioning the way you teased your sleeper quarterback. So let's hear them, Brandon.
Okay, great way to end the segment then with you can wrap it up with a couple of more. But my guy, Dan, drumroll, for 2019 is Big Red Andy Dalton. We're going to bring it back to Andy Dalton. And there's a reason here because number one, finally out of the Marvin Lewis era, Zach Taylor, who is a quarterback coach from a pretty good, consistent program or franchise before with the Rams, believes in this guy. He was actually in the same conference with him before when Dalton was at TCU, or actually it was coaching, and saw pretty much, he said he saw every snap that Andy Dalton threw while at TCU. Big Andy Dalton fan, and hey, this guy just has weapons. He still has weapons around him, and I believe in Andy Dalton. And what's the ADP on Dalton right now? If you have that, if you can remember that, Dan.
Actually, I have it here. He is 26th quarterback taken,
and so
which is pretty.
I would have to believe they're predicted to finish last in their division by most experts. So what I see is a lot of passing. Your guys, even like Joe Mixon, can catch passes. Giovanni Bernard can catch passes out of the backfield. So I think it's going to be a spread offense. It's going to be an offense that's going to pass fairly heavily in the ranks of the NFL. And with the new coach like Zach Taylor, I think he's going to continue that, if not even elevate that a little bit further. So at least just for this year, with the circumstances around him, I believe that Andy Dalton is going to be a fairly good quarterback that may even go undrafted in some leagues because people are just going to write it off like Andy Dalton. Obviously, he's going to catch the Joe Flacco disease in quarterbacks of that nature who have just like, I've seen that. Eli Manning, for example, played it out. Don't want nothing to do with that. The Bengals are going to suck, but Andy Dalton could put up actually some pretty good production for you in 2019. That's what I'm saying. I may have been, how many ever years ago that was late? I may have been 2 years late on this, Dan, but I think this is the year. If you want to sleep, or if you want to ignore the quarterbacks until like rounds 11, 12, and you want to catch a guy, Andy Dalton.
I don't know if you can see that, but Dalton was one of the two. Dalton, and it was Eli Manning was the other one. Your boy Eli, who I jinxed you when you selected him a couple years ago because I touted him as this man. So yeah, I figured you were going there. Yeah, I like Andy Dalton as a sleeper. I mean, 26 quarterback ADP means basically he is going undrafted. Eli Manning is even lower than that. He's going undrafted, especially when you take away Odell Beckham. But similar to the points that you mentioned, I think both of those teams, the Giants and Bengals, are going to be losing a lot of ball games. They're going to be throwing the ball a lot. I mean, Eli, you may say with Eli Manning receivers. He still has Sterling Shepard, Evan Ingram as a solid receiving tight end. But listen, at the end of in the fourth quarter, when they're down by 26, they're going to do a screen pass to Saquon Barkley at the 15-yard line. He's going to take it 85 yards for a touchdown. So, that's what they're going to do. I'm not saying you want to rely on necessarily either of these guys week in, week out, but as a backup quarterback in fantasy, in case of injury or a bye week, yeah, I'm plug and playing those guys depending on matchup too. So there's definitely this year, as I mentioned, is very deep in quarterbacks. So I never take a quarterback early. It's usually a cardinal rule. You'll never see me draft a quarterback before round 10. And I believe so even more so this year because there is so much value out there where you're going to get guys who put up very similar numbers drafted quarterback 15 compared to quarterback 5. So I'm in the belief you always want to sit back, wait on a quarterback, build the rest of your roster, even depth, like grab your fourth running back before you grab a quarterback. And just kind of see how that plays strategy-wise on your roster makeup. But there's a lot of good signal callers that you can get late and still play on a weekly basis this year.
Yeah, I feel like that quarterback position is almost like the tight end position that I mentioned before. It's like if you don't get those few top tier guys, you might as well just wait. You might as well just wait late and just get a guy that's going to have steady production. And some guys may surprise you. I think Andy Dalton will be one of those guys that surprises you for sure. Like I said, loaded with weapons, loaded with offensive weapons all around him. And with a new head coach coming in with a little bit of new fire and wanting to use his new weapons, a quarterback coach, coach very familiar with his quarterback. I think it's going to be a good combination, good chemistry there in Cincinnati, which may not lead to a lot of wins, but if you're talking about fantasy production through the air, could be a lot there. So, well, I appreciate all the questions, guys. Keep them coming. And we'll continue to do this thing a little bit more frequently as the time goes on because football is – I can smell it. I can smell it in the air. You know what pigskin smells like? Pigskin has a unique smell, Dan. And I can smell it. I can smell dirt. I can smell Friday nights. I can smell college football in the air. I can smell NFLs on Sunday. And speaking of college football, and myfantasysportstalk.com. That's what's been going on right now with all of your team previews, Dan, on the site right now. Just look at a quick glance. You got Pittsburgh, NC State, North Carolina, and Miami football season previews all out there right now.
Yeah, if you can't tell, all those are members of the ACC. So I am almost done. I have Syracuse, Wake Forest, and the Virginia schools left. Hopefully those will be up in the next couple days. And then we move on to the next major conference. I built myself some time to be able to get through most of the conferences. I also did Colorado, University of Buffalo, some other schools kind of mixed in there. But I've noticed, if you follow the site, we're big on the NFL draft, and allowing me to do these previews kind of give me a list of who I want to watch and scout throughout the college football season for the NFL draft. So it's kind of helped me that way, and it's obviously we've gotten some decent feedback on them through fans of the school. I didn't know there were that many Louisville Cardinals fans, but we got some messages like crazy after the Louisville Cardinals preview was published. So, hey, you learned something new, and one of them was very happy that a certain running back named Colin Wilson, I'm sure you've heard of him, he ran for 208 yards last year. He did not transfer. He entered the transfer portal but didn't transfer. And we got messages saying, oh, my gosh, I didn't know this. This is great news. And so, yeah, I guess it is. So. I'm happy for
I
you,
guess.
Louisville Cardinals fans.
Well, the bad news is you no longer have Lamar Jackson, Petrino. I mean, things kind of took a dip there for Louisville after those guys were kind of carrying the offensive load for you. But I'm not hating on him. Yes, I am hating on Louisville as an arch rival of the Memphis Tigers. I don't like Louisville. I'm just going to tell you straight up. But keep the questions coming in comments. Appreciate it, guys. But a lot more fantasy football to come, college football to come, football to come, and football to come. Just it's that time of year. We can't wait. So we'll get back at it a little bit more frequently and hit you with these podcasts and let you know what's going on the site and keep you up to date of the content you can find on myfantasysportstalk.com. So thanks for the questions. Hey, shout out Nick and Judy Pertins. Missed you guys. We're back. Thanks, guys, for submitting the questions, and we'll be back at it. So, Dan, last words for the peeps at home.
Yeah, I like that Nick and Judy shout out. They're the reigning champs of our fantasy football league, and we will be drafting, obviously, in like a month's time or so. So reach out. We didn't receive a question. You probably didn't know there was this spontaneous show. So as Brandon said, we want to do it more and more. So we need some paragraph-long questions in our life, and Nick Pertins is the guy to do so. So get in touch, and for all of you listening, submit your mailbag questions. I'll be doing an article on them, and obviously I think we're going to be doing some more segments in the podcast to answer them. So reach out, get a hold of us, and check My Fantasy Sports Talk for all the fantasy football rankings that will be unveiled over the next couple weeks, along with all the college football previews.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So for the editor-in-chief, Dan Shaw, I am Brandon Reed. For the next My Fantasy Podcast, peeps, appreciate it. Keep sending the questions, and we'll see you later. Peace.